People, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown. It is the 30th of the 1st. I hope we are all there. 5 stories today, some quite long, tedious stuff. Interesting, of course. I don't bring you anything bar the most interesting of words in an order. We'll start with Nadim Zahawi, the now the ex-Tory party chair, of course, who was once the Tory party Chancellor of the Exchequer for about a week. He has finally been sacked by Rishi Sunak over breaching the ministerial code with his tax affairs. I say sacked. As with all of these, he's not been sacked. He has been removed from cabinet. He still has the whip. He's still getting paid 80k plus a year. He still has a say in our laws. So it's not really a sacking. It's a removal from being able to sit down daily with Sunak and chat about how to screw the poor. And of course, he's still got all of the expenses he could ever wish for. None of that has been gone. But he has been sacked. Oh, we've got him. Look at Sunak being strong. Sunak got a report from his ethics advisor on Sunday saying Zahawi had breached the ministerial code 7 times, including by failing to declare the HMRC investigation into his finances and the subsequent £5 million settlement with penalty that he had to pay, even though it could have given rise to a conflict of interest. It's the thing when you go to the committee and say, can we have this person as a cabinet minister? One of the things you have to do is be honest, and he wasn't. Zahawi also failed to be as open as possible with Parliament and the public when he dismissed media reports last July as inaccurate, unfair and clearly smears. In July, we had the first report of the HMRC investigating Zahawi. He said, oh, no, this is all bollocks. You're all attacking me. This is the fourth estate. Oh, you bastards, I can't believe it. You're only going after me because I'm a Tory. It's all lies, it's all lies, it's all lies. And he knew at the time it wasn't. Once again, still a Tory MP, still getting 80k a fucking year, and all of the expenses that he wants. And if you have a look at MP's expenses, they tend to be 6 figures. Cost of living, bloody blah. That's why someone like Lee Anderson can take a fucking long walk off the short pier. I think his expenses was like £200,000. Oh, you can make a meal for 30p, you tedious fuck. Sunak, of course, claimed that he has worked pretty damn quickly in removing Zahawi, a mere 2 weeks after the story first came out, and getting the information from the ethics advisor that was publicly available 2 weeks ago. We'll have to wait and see if Sunak has the same stringent belief in the ministerial code as he did have for Suella Braverman, who of course broke the ministerial code and then was able to keep her job or get her job back as the Home Secretary about a week after she had been sacked for breaking the ministerial code. This is the second cabinet minister to go in Sunak's first 100 days. The first was Gavin Williamson. He resigned after we all found out that he was a bullying prick. And we still have Dominic Raab's investigation into him being a bullying prick to look forward to, once again with Sunak's strength as a leader. In Zahawi's letter to Sunak accepting his resignation, Zahawi decided to take aim at the press, claiming that the conduct of the Fourth Estate was concerning. This is trying to deflect his actions and trying to point all the blame at the press, because he is a tedious, repugnant cunt. Sunak also today, this is a different news story now, that's where we are. Sunak has defended his plan to tackle the NHS crisis through criticism that the blueprint only aspires to reduce ambulance response times to 30 minutes for Category 2 call-outs, which can include suspected heart attacks and strokes, despite the official NHS targets being 18 minutes. The plan promises 800 more ambulances and 5,000 more hospital beds. It doesn't plan for giving NHS staff more money, and I'm not exactly sure, considering that there are tens of thousands of vacancies in the NHS, I'm not sure where all the people are going to come from to drive these ambulances or to look after the people on these beds. That's not in the blueprint at the moment. They say, we're going to get people in. We're going to get all the people. There's so many people we're going to get in. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be just, we're not going to have to worry about working anymore because everyone's going to be there. It's all going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. Fuck knows where. Not a dicky. It's all just words, innit? This is it. Just all words. We've got Barclays and UBS are facing questions over ties to Roman Abramovich after his secret offshore trusts were reorganised before Europe and the UK put in their sanctions against him for the invasion, for Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Shortly before the invasion, 10 offshore trusts were quickly rearranged to transfer beneficial ownership of a significant portion of his fortune to his children. Lucky children. Though it does suggest that there's going to be a slight turnaround with Papa having to go to his children and saying, hey, can I have my allowance, please? It does raise questions about how Barclays and UBS responded to the changes, and whether, since these sanctions were imposed, they have allowed Abramovich's children to financially benefit from assets that, until a few weeks before the invasion and the sanctions, were actually owned by the father. This seems like just looking at it, seems dodgy as the day is long, isn't it? A couple of weeks before an invasion, he happens to get a large chunk of his money and give it to his children, thereby foregoing the sanctions placed on him because they weren't placed on his children. Barclays are said to have acknowledged the change, and UBS moved to prevent the attempted movement of beneficial ownership, transfer of beneficial ownership, but specific details of either bank are yet to be fully known. Under EU and EU law, UK and EU law, you dumb fuck. Words, mate, Christ on a bike. Under the UK and EU law, banks are required to freeze assets if they are owned 50% or more by a sanctioned person. Freezes can also apply to when sanctioned people own less than 50% of the assets but exercise direct or indirect control over it. Now you'll notice, if you've watched more than these, I tend to put those bits in which are remarkably boring, incredibly boring bits of information. I'm fully aware, I know how boring that sentence was, but it is information and it ties everything in, and so information knowledge is key, as it were, even if it is boring to say, let alone I assume hear. All this comes after the release of the oligarch files at the start of the month, which were a cache of leaked confidential documents containing emails, bank records, company filings, trust documents, and compliance reports originating from Merit Service, which is an offshore service provider based in Cyprus. This is just basically seeing whether or not sanctions are going to work. Because sanctions will not work if banks do not follow the very simple rules of freezing all the fucking money, making sure that these billionaires who have the ear of Putin make sure that they can't actually get hold of any of their money, so they may go, hey Putin, we've given you all of this money, can you not? That's the plan anyway. Two more stories. At least 2,400 companies with UK property still have not publicly declared their ultimate owners, as they are controlled by secretive trusts. In a bid to improve transparency, the UK government set up a new register for overseas entities. So far, 18,000 companies have registered. The deadline is tomorrow, the 31st of January. About 5,800 of the beneficial owners are named as companies and not individuals, with at least 2,400 of them appearing as trusts with no public info about who is behind them, really taking away the point of the fucking transparency. More than 20 Tory donors and a string of billionaires have so far declared they own UK property from offshore jurisdictions, with Gulf royalty and the likes of the Chinese state having brought billions of mostly London property. You just think, we do not own a fair chunk of our country. This is the truth. This is the absolute truth. So when you've got the likes of fucking Lee Anderson, of Nigel Farage, these bigots, these tiny little fucking specks of humanity whose death would change nothing. They are nothingness, absolute fucking nothingness. I wouldn't even pay to dance in their fucking graves. There is nothing about them at all. Their passing would be like just a light breeze going past you. You wouldn't even notice it. They go on their bigotry about the fucking EU and refugees coming over to this country and immigrants and everything else. What they never fucking talk about is the fact that the rich own London. You've got Gulf royalty, you've got the Chinese state, an actual fucking country that is not an ally of ours. They own us. One of the reasons that property is so bloody expensive is because it is not owned by us. That's the bit where you want to be talking about foreign fucking influence. Go on about the fucking EU every 2 seconds. So there's still not enough transparency, even if the government is coming up with an idea of saying, right, I need more transparency for who owns shit. We're still not getting it. They tried though. They did actually try for a change. Final story. According to NGOs, new legislation that, if passed, will obligate NGOs to provide the government with all of their financial records so their political agendas and funding can be scrutinised, would kill the last functioning remnant of democracy in Venezuela. Yes, this is a Venezuelan story. Humanitarian and human rights groups have said the plans are a pretext to take further control of the country after years of democratic erosion from the Maduro and Chavez regimes. These, of course, were the fantastic socialist, left-wing, praise be, thank Christ we've got Venezuela leaders who have decimated the fucking country. Maduro has used state repression to hold on to power whilst the economy is collapsing, with more than 7 million people fleeing Venezuela due to rampant hyperinflation, hunger and human rights abuses. Freedom of expression, of course, has been removed, is already non-existent in the country, with this bill being the latest attempt to intimidate civil society into silence. The left, of course, love backing Venezuela, and I hope that after watching some of this, maybe you've seen some of me stand up or something, you'll understand that I'm not one of those anti-woke comedians. I'm not a right-winger. I don't say things just for attention. I think that the majority of the right wing are piles of human waste. I think the far right are cunts. But I do think it is important to understand that the left, especially for the past few years, has been shit. The inability to change their minds is just as prevalent on the left as it is on the right. The continual need to pick heroes, so something I find abhorrent, continues on the left constantly. The whole backing of Venezuela is a prime example of this. The loving that happened when Maduro came in was a prime example of the continual mistakes that the left can make. Venezuela have removed freedom of press, used military to squash dissent through human rights abuses, and are currently under investigation by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. It is very easy, and the argument that has been made in the past a number of times, to say that the left say about the likes of Venezuela, well, it's because of the US. The US are the reason for this. And in the past, certainly, the US are one of the big evils in this world. Truly they are. But people have to also take responsibility for their own actions. The US isn't the one that is potentially doing crimes against humanity. That is the Venezuelan government, and there is no excuse for that. It's always important to remember that, of course, everyone is a cunt. So, right, well, I hope this has been of interest to some of you. The 1st of February, if you're in Aldgate, we've got a new night of Comedy Under Siege at the Castle. Free tickets, great lineup. I'm going to be headlining because I've got a pro night to do and I need to test out what the fucking set's going to be. So I shall talk to you all later. Bye.